Hello, and on behalf of our entire team here at Akrinos and our collaborators across Vision and Eye Care, welcome to the first episode of the Cold Start Corner Live. It's been a wonderful project in the making, and we've got really an amazing webcast in store for you, because what we're doing is something that's radically different, right? And it really all centers around a central belief that we all share. This is belief that private practice is going to save eye care. However, what's necessary for a modern practice to thrive is radically different from what was necessary even just a few short years ago. So you'll find as we embark on this journey together throughout the Cold Start Corner Live, in both this episode and a lot of really great stuff we have in sure, you're going to notice it's going to really revolve around three central elements. That is going to be establishing practices, modern practices that are set up to amplify profit, modern practices that are set up to operate with minimal headaches, and modern practices that are set up with an environment that's going to nurture culture. So what can you expect here when you come here to the Cold Start Corner Live? Well, here's the deal. Uncertainty is all around us. And the fact is that in the face of uncertainty, it's natural to gravitate to fear. But it's in the context of this fear that we come to being more reactionary with our behaviors and sometimes come to let some of the negativity loom in. We're here to change that, right? It's high time that we change this narrative. So everything you expect here at the Cold Start Corner Live is all about opportunity. Uncertainty is out there, and we're going to have a ton of fun having great conversations with inspiring thought leaders and guests around every facet to plan, develop, and launch a thriving practice. But realize, first and foremost, it was all centered around seeing the opportunity that lies on the horizon. From there, we can be proactive with our decision making, no matter what path you're wanting to take. So, to kick off this first episode, we thought it would be really great to really address what is hands down the most common question that we get asked from emerging entrepreneurs across North America. And it's this: is now the time for me to cold start or purchase a practice? Now, that's a huge question. It's a huge question. And we realize that in posing that question, there's kind of two things. And I will invite you all, our viewers and listeners out there, if this is speaking to you, right, and you're wondering, is now the right time? I would invite you to assess it in two regards. One is from a macroeconomic level. And I'll address that for a moment. Because the fact is this: when you're looking at macroeconomic trends, and surely right now, as we're doing this first recording in January of 23, with the prospect of a looming recession on the horizon, this question of it is now the time to get into practice ownership. Well, yes, there's no better time, and here's why. The public health need for routine vision and medical eye care continues to skyrocket. And to meet that growing need, we're seeing this radical expansion of scope of care across modern optometry. So that being said, when we look at this growth of public health need and this expansion of care, we come to see that it's the makings for a really, really robust complementary market. Now, but it's not that easy, right? Because in order to cold start or purchase a practice, we're typically talking about going to a bank and borrowing some funds, and well, get into all the stuff we're going to jump into in this and future episodes of the Cold Start Corner. But it really revolves around recognizing that, if now were not the right time, and if optometry were not a marvelous profession with so much opportunity, quite frankly, banks would not be lining up to write loans. As a matter of fact, you'll see here in some of our upcoming episodes, we're actually going to have a banker join us here to answer your questions live about cold starting or purchasing an optometry practice in the year 23 with this looming recession. So I wanted to start by, again, addressing that. Is now a good time to entertain cold starting or purchasing a practice? Absolutely. Why? The need continues to rise. The scope of care you possess continues to expand. And banks are ready to finance these businesses because they know that private practices are such profitable, sustainable businesses. So Now, that addresses the question, is now the right time from a macroeconomic standpoint? But it's also important to consider, and I would imagine many of our viewers out there who they themselves are going back and forth with the idea of if now is the time, chances are it will also play in regard to some of your micro indicators. And these are things that are more personal to you and your household. So again, what you can expect here in the context of the Cold Start Corner is that we're going to have some remarkable experts joining us along the way to again answer these questions to best prepare you for that right time. So in this, the first episode, we thought that we would make it all about cold starting versus purchasing a practice, because quite frankly, when our team here at Akrinos was coming up with the schedule for these webcasts. And again, y'all, we've got some amazing things in store with the Cold Start Corner. It's only just beginning today, but we did realize we wanted to kind of put it in have each episode set up with a general conversation starter, right? So today's conversation starter, aside from just introducing the Cold Start Corner live, is which path is best for you, to cold start or to purchase? And as we're going to get into exploring some of this, I do want to invite everyone. Again, we are here live in LinkedIn. So if you are joining us live, please do. If you got questions, drop them there in the comments. If you do have a comment to offer, again, as I'm seeing some of our live viewers that are with us, we've got some really remarkable thought leaders, doctors, financial planners, entrepreneurs, industry folks joining us. So please do. Offer your contributions to the conversation. So to kick off this whole topic of what's right for me, to cold start or to purchase, well, there's a lot of different things that are going to kind of play into that decision. And most often, I suppose for a lot of doctors, they're looking from the standpoint of either A, there is something that's available here in my market, what we call the fixer upper, right? So there is that fixer upper there in my market, or B, I know I want to get into ownership, but I don't know which path I really want to kind of start marching down. So we thought we'd take a few minutes to kind of serve up some of the most valid considerations, and really some of these primary starting points you're going to want to explore as you're balancing and figuring out which path is going to be right for you. And I'd say it probably all starts with vision, right? Hands down. And to understand that it's going to be far more than just vision. It's going to be that mission, vision, and purpose. Now, although this stuff is sometimes kind of used interchangeably, these terms, be clear that vision, mission, and purpose are kind of identifying three different aspects of your business. So again, if you're following along, taking notes, start with this, jot this down. Your vision is what your organization aspires to be. So as you're sitting here reflecting on what your future in private practice may look like, again, think of that vision as being what your practice aspires to be. Now that is different from your mission. And your mission is going to be more around what your practice does and for whom. So you can think of it along the lines of perhaps your mission is to provide full scope modern eye care within your community, specializing in pediatrics and families. So that may be your mission. And your vision then is that you want to be the destination for families seeking routine family and medical eye care, right? So again, that mission is going to be more about what your practice does and for whom, and that vision is going to be a bit more conceptual as far as what you aspire to be. And last but certainly not least, as we're on this topic of vision, incorporate purpose into this dialogue as well. And your purpose really identifies the reasons why your practice exists. Now, I will say this on behalf of our team. Again, we connect with doctors all over North America that are excited and ready to leap into practice ownership. Many of them have already identified their purpose, right? So it's really about taking that purpose and then building out your vision, which you aspire to be, and that mission, which your practice specifically is going to do and for whom, that can really start to kind of direct us on that path if cold starting or purchasing a practice is going to be right for you. So we're seeing, so I'm sorry, I had to catch up here on the chats. By the way, we did make mention, this is our very first airing of the Cold Start Corner Live. So we're getting really good with our controls here. And it does appear that in the context of this, obviously, there does come to be this conversation centered around practice valuations as well. And really recognizing that, and actually I'm kind of catching up here. I think we're going to come back to those comments as I'm trying to catch up in here. But I think what it really boils down to is that, yes. Okay. So catching up here on the thread, it appears to be, and Kristen, let's make note of a way that where I can have visibility of the real-time dialogue, because I'm only seeing partial of the comments. But getting back to it. Okay. That was a note from Adam Schmela. You can't have an open chat and expect me to not say something. And for those of you that don't know, actually, Adam Schmela is going to be joining us on some future episodes here. Adam has a specialty financial planning business that works exclusively with optometrists. But in the context of this, I believe what we were getting at here in the context of cold starting or purchasing is to kind of look at it from the standpoint, to Adam's point, regarding your vision, to consider that with that cold start, that's where you're truly going to have that blank canvas, right? And what we'll often find, as a matter of fact, I mean, we connect with doctors every day that are looking at these fixture upper practices, and that comes to be a big struggle that they're facing, right? Do I start with a blank canvas where I can implement my vision from day one, or do I go in and buy up this fixture upper that, although it may have cash flow from day one, there's going to be some other constraints that you may be facing as it pertains to really implementing your vision across the practice. So I see another comment here. Dr. Jennifer Stewart has also engaged. As a matter of fact, Dr. Stewart and I had a meeting very recently. Excited to have her here on some upcoming episodes. As far as Dr. Stewart's firsthand experience goes, I think many of you know of her story and her experience, everything, all the amazing stuff she does with OBD Perspectives. But she had the opportunity to purchase a practice 3 years out of optometry school. And again, we're going to have her on the show here in the coming weeks to share a bit of her story and how she went through it. But from this starting point, again, y'all, cold starting versus purchasing a practice, it all starts with vision. To recognize that when you are cold starting, you have that blank canvas. When you are purchasing a practice, you will perhaps have some things to overcome as you're really implementing your vision. So I'd say the second next kind of key consideration here as it pertains to navigating cold starting versus purchasing a practice is scope of care. And this is really big. This has really become a huge consideration here the last handful of years, given what I shared earlier in this webcast, and that is the fact that scope of care continues to expand at a rapid rate, truly. So that being said, it's important, particularly for younger modern ODs, to really investigate not only where they are now, but really what is that future scope of care that they may want to incorporate into the practice, right? So again, the public health need we know continues to grow, and to meet that demand, R&D, educational institutions, the regulatory environment are also rapidly evolving, which is now opening up so much opportunity for enterprising optometrists, new opportunities. So that being said, as far as a few things you could do to kind of figure out if cold starting or purchasing a practice is the right route for you, if you do want to get into specialty care and practice that full scope of care, really identify what your current scope of care is and reflect on some of those areas you may like to expand into. From there, it's going to be vital to really get into doing some local market research to see if those relevant patient populations are in the area. Now, mind you, probably light bulb goes off there. Again, if you're cold starting, you can let the maps kind of direct where you're going to go. But if you're purchasing that practice, you're likely going to be confined to where that practice is currently locating. From there, take the time to get into crunching some numbers, right? Quantify what the capital, personnel, and operational requirements are going to be to grow that specialty, grow that broader full scope. And then last but not least, look, networking in the area. Come to know, again, if you're looking to cold start or purchase a practice and have specialty care included in it, have a full scope of care, definitely get out there, network with area optometrists, ophthalmologists, opticians, and physicians across all complementary specialties. So a really good example would be if you're going to do vision therapy, perhaps myopia management, if those are going to be your specialty, definitely be sure to connect with all those pediatricians in your community. And most importantly, as it pertains to position yourself to grow your cold start or your practice purchase with a specialty care, most importantly, position yourself as the expert. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation recently with someone else who's going to be joining us here on a future episode of the Cold Start Corner, who had remarkable success in launching a specialty in her cold start. I believe she deployed the specialty in month 3 of her cold start. And she had remarkable success with it because, again, she positioned herself as the expert. Important to note. I figure it's only a matter of time before Mr. Steve Alexander shared some pearls. For those of y'all who don't know Steve Alexander, he is definitely a thought leader across the industry as it pertains to growing practices independently of vision plans. And Steve left a comment here that, and Steve, I think it's really important to point out. Important note: you can't specialize in everything. And again, it's all so vitally important to really discover yourself. That's why you'll notice this all kind of starts with some personal reflection. What is your personal vision, mission, purpose? What are your professional aspirations as to the scope of care you'd like to provide into the community? But realizing you can't be everything to everyone. The more specialized and honed in you can get, the better you can position yourself as the expert, and actually the more upward potential that is going to be within your practice. So moving along here, we're exploring some of these concepts regarding cold starting or purchase a practice. We started the conversation touching on, just those core values. Establish your core values as a professional, centered around your professional vision, mission, and purpose. From there, it's then a matter of looking at your skill set, assessing that scope of care that you would like to provide to your community, both now and in the future. And I think it's another important consideration also to make here is that while there is no time like the present to jump into practice ownership, right? And again, everything you're going to get here in the Cold Start Corner is going to empower you to seize the moment, right? While there is no time like the present, you definitely do have to be dialed in and methodical about exactly what you're focusing on. So again, that scope of care piece, it's vital you understand not only what is the scope of care you want to provide today, but also what would the future of your practice look like. So from here, as we're continuing to walk down this path of really discovering if cold starting or purchasing is going to be right for you, and next up is going to be control, right? So, the fact is, no matter your experience in leadership or management, private practice ownership demands both leadership and management ability. Now, that being said, that then tosses up this question of the degree to which you prefer kind of full autonomous decision-making as compared to collaborative decision-making, and then putting all of that in the context of a blank slate in a cold start and an established practice with existing processes and protocols with that practice purchase. So, it's absolutely, it's one thing to seek outside guidance as you're going through this process, right? But it's a total other thing when you're actually sitting down next to other owners around the owner table. And particularly if there come to be, disagreement amongst the parties. So again, it's really important as you're exploring whether cold starting or purchasing is right for you, that degree of control you want. Now, for starters, if you want to be in ownership and you do not want to be in full control, there are so many practices out there that are looking to take on associates that aspire to get into partnership. As a matter of fact, my good friend and founder of the GRT Summit, Dr. Paul Mormon, look, that's the spirit of everything he has headed up within the GRT Summit. And we're going to have some really great stuff coming on the Cold Start Corner about that as well. But again, if you want to be in ownership, but you don't want full autonomous control, there's so many doctors across North America that are looking for that right associate to bring on and make a partner. That can also be a really great opportunity for you to further develop as a leader and a manager as you're coming into ownership. But that being said, we'll get back to some of these other things to really consider as it pertains to control. Look, do you prefer attention to detail or do you prefer the big picture in things? You know, as it pertains to decision making, do you seek alternative viewpoints or you always right your perspective? Next up, how comfortable are you delegating? Now, mind you, that topic of delegation, we're going to visit that quite a bit in some later episodes as we're talking about building your team. But here we're talking about delegating across co-owners. And lastly, how frequently do you seek input from others when making financial decisions? So these are just a few of those high-level questions that may help you better realize kind of, are you best to go at this in a partnership capacity, or are you more cut out to go the lone wolf route? And look, y'all, the beauty in all this is that there's no right or wrong answers, right? There's no one path. And that's why I think it's such an exciting time right now for modern optometrists that entrepreneurial spirit is growing in them. Because again, when you look at the public health need for routine vision medical eye care in this radically expanding scope of care of modern optometry, there's so much opportunity. So we're continuing to walk through this conversation of, should I cold start or should I purchase a practice? And we've touched on vision. We've touched on scope of care. We've touched on control. Now a word on risk tolerance, because I think it's safe to say that is arguably the biggest looming thing, right? And we started our conversation when introducing you here to the Cold Start Corner, we started it with fear, right? And the fact is, in the face of uncertainty, it's natural to gravitate to fear. And what we're looking to do here at the Cold Start Corner is to look in that uncertainty and present you with opportunity, right? But that being said, everyone does have their own risk tolerance, right? We go out to Vision Expo West. Who's going to the casinos? Who's going to the industry events, right? So it really does beg the question, though, how many modern optometrists right now, how many of you viewers and listeners that are ready to get into ownership right now, how many of you would jump in immediately if you were guaranteed to succeed? Absolutely, hands down, everyone would, right? So while there's no guarantee, optometry private practice is incredibly low risk. Along with private practice, like you name the healthcare specialty, there's huge opportunity there. And really what best kind of affirms this was something we said earlier, and that's look at available financing. Banks would not be lining up to fund cold starts. Banks would not be lining up to help emerging practice owners purchase these fixer-uppers if banks did not see optometry as having a strong track record in establishing viable businesses. So, however, everyone does have their own risk tolerance. So in the context of practice ownership, then cold starting does bear a little bit higher risk than purchasing a practice. However, the ROI is also going to be typically significantly higher than purchasing a practice. So here we are. We've unpacked some really great topics and ideas around navigating if cold starting or purchasing the practice is right for you. As we're kind of looking to wrap things up here, it's important then to kind of, I suppose, pull it all together with what we're going to call rules of thumb, right? And our goal here is we're just going to go down a list of a handful of items and give you like simple shoot from the hip. What do you need to know if you're going to be cold starting or purchasing a practice? So we're going to start with startup cost, okay? Startup costs for cold starting versus purchasing a practice. Cold starting practice is typically less startup cost than is purchasing a practice. Next up, access to financing. Oh, By the way, if you wanted to kind of learn more about that, we got some great resources at the Cold Start Corner at Akrinos.com that further will elaborate on those startup costs. Again, cold starting versus purchasing a practice. Moving forward, access to financing. So if you're looking to cold start, you're going to the bank for money, you can expect that your access to finance is going to be based on three critical factors. It's going to be your financial forecast and feasibility analysis for your practice. It's going to be your business plan for your practice, and it's going to be your personal finances. Now, if you're purchasing a practice, your access to finances is going to be contingent on three variables. It's going to be the practice valuation for the fixer-upper you're looking to purchase, the business plan for that fixer-upper with your vision. So what is your plan upon purchasing the practice? And then third is going to be financials, which in this case is going to be composed of your personal financials and the financials of the practice in question. Regarding location, cold start, remember what we said earlier in the episode, when you're cold start, you have a blank canvas. So totally geospatially optimize that location, and you are in full control of your lease negotiations and terms. Comparatively, though, when purchasing a practice, the location, you're going to inherit that in-force lease. As such, that location, some of those terms you may be bound to for the foreseeable future. Regarding design, again, just as with location, when you're cold starting, it's a blank canvas. You can really find that space and design that space truly suited to your scope of care and vision. Conversely, if you're purchasing the practice, again, just as with the location, you're really inheriting that design as is. As it pertains to equipment, when you're cold starting, you can source that equipment to really suit that scope of care. And you yourself can negotiate all of your warranties and services. And by the way, we're going to be getting into a lot of this great stuff in some future episodes of the Cold Start Corner. However, when you are purchasing a practice as it pertains to that equipment, you're purchasing that equipment. As such, any existing warranties, service terms, and functionality may be questionable, and definitely important to do your due diligence there. As it pertains to operations, you named it. You guessed it, right? When you're cold starting, you are creating, documenting, and implementing everything, as opposed to when purchasing a practice, where it's more a matter of process change management. Likewise, with HR and staffing, where when you're cold start, you're going to be that sole HR decision maker, as opposed to when purchasing the practice and you're inheriting a lot of these functions. Same thing with branding, brand building, new patient engagement for your cold start. Comparatively, when purchasing a practice, your task is going to be to really rebrand that practice and re-engage patients to come to the practice as your vision is being implemented. Regarding your income as the entrepreneur, certainly with a cold start, there is going to be some ramp up time, but don't be afraid of that. Truly, don't be afraid of that. We're going to talk more about that in some future episodes. So with cold start, there is going to be a ramp up time for your income. Comparatively, when purchasing a practice, there will be that immediate cash flow. Last but certainly not least, return on investment. The cold start, typically higher. When purchasing a practice, typically lower. So we hope you found this valuable as you are embarking on your journey to practice ownership this year. And whether it's going to be cold starting or purchasing a practice, the fact is this: there's never been a better time to get into practice ownership. So on behalf of all of us here at Akrinos and our collaborators across vision and eye care, thank you for joining us here at the Cold Start Corner Live. And we will look forward to seeing you very soon. In fact, mark your calendars. The next Cold Start Corner Live event will be taking place on Saturday, January the 21st. We got a very special guest joining us, that being Dr. Paul Mormon, founder of the GRT Summit. And we're going to continue exploring some of the really great opportunity around cold starting and purchasing a practice. And we are always here to answer your questions live. So if you'd like to get a hold of us at the Cold Start Corner, you can email us at contact@akrinos.com, or just visit akrinos.com, check out the Cold Start Corner, leave some comments and some questions. On behalf of all of us here at Akrinos, have a great week.